İnsani Gelişme Raporu Türkiye lansmanı
Human
etkinliğine
Development
hepiniz
Program
hoş geldiniz.
UNDP
Ben TRT World'dan
Human
Ayşe
Development
Süberker.
Report
Bugünkü etkinliğin
2020
sunucusu olarak burada
launching
olmaktan
event
dolayı
Turkey.
mutluluk duyuyorum.
Welcome to
Ve
our
hepinizi
event.
saygı ve
I am
sevgiyle
Ayşe
selamlıyorum
Süberker.
TRT
I will
World
be the
İstanbul
master of ceremony
stüdyolarından.
today. Thank you for
Toplantımıza
joining
başlamadan
us.
önce sizlere
I
yaşanabilecek
am
aksaklıklar
welcoming you
durumunda
from
yapmanız
TRT
gereken
World
bir
Istanbul
takım
Studios.
teknik müdahaleleri
I would like to
anlatmak
remind you
isterim.
first some
Toplantı
technical actions to be
süresince
taken
malumunuz
by
tercüme
you.
hizmeti
You
bulunacaktır.
know that
Tercüme
we
modülünü
have
ekranın
interpretation service
altındaki
throughout the
Zoom araç
meeting,
çubuğundan
and at the bottom of
görebilirsiniz.
the
Küre
Zoom screen
işaretiyle
you
belirtilen
will
tercüme
see
modülünü
a globe
tıklayarak
sign which represents the
doğru
interpretation
dili
service.
seçmeniz
If you can
gerekmektedir.
click it
Toplantıyı
and
İngilizce dilinde takip etmek
select
için
the
İngilizce
correct
kanalı,
option for
Türkçe
you,
dilini takip etmek
then
için de
it will run
Türkçe
smoothly
kanalını
to listen to the
seçmeniz
conference
yeterli
in English
olacaktır.
language.
Tercüme
Please choose
kanallarında
English,
çevirinin yanı
and
sıra
Turkey for
orijinal
the
ses düşük bir
opposite.
seviyede
In addition
duyulacaktır.
to
Bunu tercih
the
etmiyorsanız
interpretation
Mute
volume,
Original
you
Audio
may
seçeneğini
hear the
tıklayabilir
original
ve sadece çeviriyi
audio
dinleyebilirsiniz.
at
Tercüme
lower
modülü
volume. If you don't
kullanımında
want
bir
it,
problem
please use mute
yaşıyorsanız
audio
uygulamanızın güncel
original.
olduğundan emin
If
olun.
you are
Eğer
having any
uygulamanız
problems with the
güncel değilse
interpretation service, please
toplantıdan
make sure that
çıkın,
your
güncelleyin
application
ve
is
tekrar
up to date.
oturuma
If
giriş
it is not, please
yapabilirsiniz.
log
Toplantı
out,
süresince
update your
Q&A
software,
modülünden de
and log in
sorularınızı
again. During the meeting,
iletebilirsiniz.
you can also
Eğer
send us your
hazırsanız hadi
questions
gelin
by
hep
using the
birlikte
Q&A module.
başlayalım.
If you are ready, let's start.
İnsani Gelişme Raporu 1990
Human
yılındaki ilk
Development
sayısından bu
Report,
yana
in fact, was
ülkelerin
first
ekonomik
published with the
gelişmelerinin
first
yanı
issue in
sıra insanların
1990, and
özgürlüklerini
since then,
insana
together with the
yarışı bir
economic
hayat sürmelerinin
developments,
odağına
in
aldı
fact, it
ve gelişim
focused
olgusunu bu kapsam üzerinden
on
değerlendirmeye çalıştı. İnsani
the
Gelişim Endeksi,
economic
insanların
development, human
ülkelerindeki
freedoms, and
ortalama yaşam
also a
süresi,
decent
ortalama eğitim
life,
süresi
and
ve
it
gelirlerine dair
includes certain
veriler
factors
toplayarak
like
elde
life
ediliyor.
expectancy, means
2020
years of
İnsani
schooling,
Gelişme
and
Raporu'nun
also
bu yılki
mean
başlığı
income.
önümüzdeki sınır, insani gelişme ve
2020
antroposen.
Human Development
Bizlere
Report
dünyanın
has the
geldiği
title
önemli bir
of The
eşiği
Next
aslında
Frontier, Human
işaret
Development
etmekte.
and the
İnsan çağı olarak
Anthropocene.
tanımlanan
So
antroposen,
Anthropocene is
insanların
defined
gezegenin
as the
geleceğini
human
şekillendiren
age,
baskın güç
and in fact
olduğu yeni bir
Anthropocene is a
jeolojik
new
çağ olarak
geological
da
age
açıklanıyor.
which the
Dünyamızı derinden
humans
sarsan COVID-19
shape the
da bu
planet
çağ
as a
ile
dominant power.
ilişkilendiriliyor.
In
Bu
fact,
virüs ve yaşanan
COVID-19
birçok
is
felaket
also
tesadüf ürünü
associated
olmaktan
with
çok
this
aslında insanların doğayı bozmasının bir sonucu
era.
olarak karşımıza çıkıyor. Örnek olarak
This virus
koronavirüsün
is not
çeşitli
coincidental,
vahşi
but it is the
hayvanların ve
result of the
insanların
destruction
uzun
that is
sürede
caused on
bir
the
arada
nature by
bulunduğu
the
bir ortamda
human.
türemiş
In
olması,
fact, when we
bilim
look at the
insanlarının uzun
coronavirus
yıllardır dikkat
reproduced
çekmeye
in an environment
çalıştığı bir
where the wild animals and
ihtimaldi ve
humans
bu
stayed
ihtimalin
together for a
gerçeğe
long
dönüşmesi bilim
time,
insanlarını
and
açıkçası
in
pek
fact
de
the scientists are
şaşırtmadı.
not
Ülkelerin
surprised to see
birbirlerine
that the
ticari
chance
anlaşmalarla bağlı,
really
hatta zaman
found the
zaman bağımlı
reality.
olduğu küresel sistemde
In
bir bölgede
in
yaşanan
today's global
gezegensel
order, the
dengesizlikler
countries are
dünyanın başka
interconnected
yerlerinde
with
de
commercial
pekala ciddi sonuçlar
agreements,
doğurabiliyor.
and in fact,
Koronavirüs
one
bu
planetary
durumu tüm
imbalance
gerçekliğiyle de
can
yüzümüze
create
vurmuş
consequences in
durumda.
other parts of the world,
Gezegensel
and we see this
dengesizlikler ve
reality now
sosyal
with the
eşitsizliklerin
coronavirus.
birbirini
And
beslediği
all
bir
these planetary
döngüde
imbalances
artık
and
tekil
social
yaklaşımlar yerine
inequalities
bütüncül
are
bir
feeding one
anlayış ve
another. So
işbirliğiyle tüm dünyanın hep beraber
now we
hareket
need a
etmesi de
holistic approach, and the
elzem
whole
görünüyor.
world
İnsani
needs
gelişmenin
to act
önündeki
together.
sınır bir
So
yanda
the
sosyal normlar,
frontier
değerler,
before human development,
hükümetler ve
social
mali
norms,
teşvikleri
values,
dönüştürürken diğer yandan da
governments,
doğaya
financial
karşı doğayla
incentives
birlikte
are being
çalışmayı
transformed, and also
gerektiriyor.
it requires that we
Zira
work
aldığımız yanlış kararlar sonucunda elde
together
ettiğimiz kısa
for
vadeli
the
kazançlar
nature.
bugün
In
olduğu
fact,
gibi
because of
ileride
wrong
karşımıza
decisions,
pekala
we
felaketler olarak
may
da
have earned
çıkabilir. Sahip
some
olduğumuz
incomes, but they
tüketim
may turn into
alışkanlıklarını sadece
catastrophes in
ekonomik
future.
büyümeyle
What
değil,
about our
doğaya bırakacağı
consumer
etkiyle de
habits? It is
değerlendirmemiz
not only
işte
related
bu
to
yüzden
economic growth, but
oldukça
what about their impact
önemli.
on the nature? We have to look
2020
from these
İnsani
perspectives.
Gelişme
It's
Raporu genel
essential.
hatlarıyla biz
Human
insanlara
Development Report
artık daha az
2020,
bencil
in
olmayı
fact,
ve doğayı
tells us
ve
that we
gelecek
need to be
nesilleri
less
düşünerek hayatlarımızı
selfish, and we need to
tasarlamayı telkin
design
ediyor.
our
Şimdi
lives
ne
thinking
durumdayız
the
ve
next
bundan sonra ne
generations
yapacağımız
and the
konusunda
nature.
uzman
What is our
konuklarımızın
position, and
konuşmalarını
what
doğrusu
will be
sabırsızlıkla bekliyorum ama
doing
bir
in future?
hatırlatma.
I'm really
Etkinliğimize
eager
daha
to
geniş
listen to
kitlelerin
our
katılımına
experts.
ve ilgisine
But first, I
sunmak
have a
isteyen seyircilerimiz
reminder. If you
Twitter'da
would like to
#IGR2020 ve
share our
#IGR30 yaşında
event with
etiketiyle
large
tweet
audiences, you
atabilirler.
can
Bu arada
tweet with
yayınımızı
hashtag
YouTube'dan hem
HDR Turkey
İngilizce hem de Türkçe
2020,
olarak
and on
canlı
YouTube it is also
dinleyebilirsiniz.
possible to
Şimdi
follow
söz
our
sırası
broadcast
uzmanlarımızda. Bu yılki
live.
raporun
It's
küresel
live
lansmanı
on
dün
YouTube.
akşam.
I'd like to give the floor to our speakers. In fact, yesterday the global launch took place, and that's why today we would like to start with the Swedish ambassador, Stefan Hersham.
Thank you very much. Ours can be the first generation to end poverty. and the last generation to address climate change before it's too late. Those are words of former UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon in 2015, the year the United Nations adopted the Agenda 2030 and the Sustainable Development Goals. Today, in December 2020, we must acknowledge that the world is far from standing up to these two fundamental challenges in front of us during our time on Earth. For the first time in decades, poverty is again on the rise as an effect of the global COVID-19 pandemic, with women and children disproportionately affected. And we haven't yet reduced our carbon emissions to anywhere near the levels necessary to secure the goal of the Paris Agreement to limit climate change to an average temperature rise of 1.5 degrees. We now know that the consequences of going beyond that level may be a threat to our very existence. The voices of a young generation rightly questioning our behavior are getting louder. Greta Thunberg from my country, Sweden, has many colleagues around the world. Yesterday, the UNDP and Sweden co-hosted the global launch of the new Human Development Report, The Next Frontier, Human Development and the Anthropocene. The index that is behind the concept of human development was first published, as we know, 30 years ago. This year, the report also presents a planet-adjusted Human Development Index, and it is groundbreaking, as it, for the first time, gives us a common reference for how to measure human development, taking into account also the effects on the global environment and climate footprints of our actions. As the Prime Minister of Sweden, Stefan Löfven, said at yesterday's launch, climate change is an existential threat to us all. If we are to save our planet and our common future, we must step up the pace. We need to act now, and we need to act together. End of quote. The Paris Agreement celebrated its 5th anniversary last week. It is a multilateral triumph in a time when the whole idea of multilateralism is under pressure and under threat. Paradoxically enough, since this is a time when so many of the challenges we are facing are global in their character, the pandemic as well as global warming, it is as simple as this. We need the UN. We need the norms, the values, the human rights that the UN stands for. We need multilateral cooperation more than ever. And in that spirit, we need to implement the Paris Agreement to save the planet, our only home. Sweden aims to do its part internationally by developing innovative technology and providing finance for climate action, and nationally by intensifying efforts to become the world's first fossil-free welfare state. The Swedish Prime Minister stated that our goal as a country is to achieve climate neutrality by 2045 and negative emissions thereafter. We have a long way to go as a country to reach this objective. Our material footprint is much too large to be sustainable, and the same is true of our carbon emissions. As the Human Development Report also reminds us, as we transition into a climate sustainable model of development, we must address the inequalities of present human development and rebuild the social contract that underpins peaceful and democratic societies. I'm honored to be part of this launch event here in Turkey, and look forward to the keynote speakers to follow, to the presentations, to the discussions, to our joint reflection on this crucial, important subject. We must all explore what the messages of the report mean for our countries, our societies, our economies, and what we all can do to follow up on its recommendations. So we need to change. We need to do it now, and we can only succeed if we do it together. Thank you very much.
His Excellency, thank you very much for your remarks. You also gave us some quotations from the report. In fact, you talked about the catastrophes taking place today and in future. Before it's too late, all countries should come together to have fundamental steps in order to address climate change. The whole world needs to do it, and international cooperation is essential for this, as emphasized by His Excellency, Mr. Ambassador. Mr. Ambassador, thank you very much once again for your kind remarks. And the next one to take the floor is Mr. Alvaro Rodriguez. He is going to reach us through a video, the resident representative of UN Turkey. Let's watch it.
Distinguished Deputy Minister, distinguished Assistant Administrator, distinguished Ambassador of Sweden, distinguished UNDP resident representative, distinguished guests, dear colleagues and friends. It gives me great pleasure to join you for the launch of the 2020 Human Development Report, The Next Frontier, Human Development and the Anthropocene. I regret that I can only join you with this video message as I'm attending a regional meeting of resident coordinators at the present time. This report is an extremely important report, coming at, I think, a critical juncture in the development history, I guess, of the planet in this 21st century. It comes in the midst of the COVID pandemic that has tested national systems, not only of health, but in terms of the resilience of the population in ways that we've never seen before. And secondly, it comes 5 years after the formulation and implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals, which map out probably the most impressive agenda for human development the world has ever seen. But we are at a time of great anxiety. We do not know yet how and in which way the pandemic will come to an end, although we have hope for the vaccine. But what we do know is that our vision for development must continue to focus on the welfare of everyone. And it's precisely this welfare that we have seen challenged during COVID. I think the problems were already before COVID: inequalities between men and women, urban and rural areas, within countries and even between countries, of course. But I think that this report, highlighting the fact that for the first time ever, what humans produce will outweigh what everything else is produced in the natural world, what the so-called age of humans, simply highlights the incredible power we have to do good. But we don't always use the power we have to do good, as we've seen, for example, in the destruction of the planet's ecosystems and the consequent climate change. So it truly is an incredible juncture, maybe what some theoreticians call an inflection point. So it gives us time really to reflect. And we must take a pause and reflect on the direction of human development, on the SDGs, and what we can do to ensure the welfare of everyone in the planet in a way that is sustainable. Now, of course, the kinds of messages that you will see in the report that I know will be very eloquently presented by Claudio are not all new, in a sense, because UNDP has been undertaking human development reports for 30 years. And I would say that every year, the reports have provided new knowledge, new thinking, and forced us to review the pace of human development globally, what is working well and what is not. So I think it's a great opportunity for us to reflect, particularly at this time, as I mentioned, of COVID, of 1/3 into the SDGs, and of course, the Anthropocene age that we've now entered. So I wish you every success. I would like to congratulate Turkey for always paying such great interest to the human development reports, both government and citizens at large, UNDP for its excellent work, and commit that in the spirit of the UN reforms, we will continue to work, of course, making use of all of the incredible talents and comparative advantages that UNDP has to promote greater integration within our approaches to the Sustainable Development Goals as embodied in our upcoming United Nations Sustainable Development Cooperation Framework for Turkey, which will start, we hope, on the 1st of January 2021. Thank you very much and have a great event.
Deputy Minister,
all the nice wishes. I'd like to invite to the floor Assistant Administrator of UNDP and Director of UNDP Regional Bureau for Europe and CIS. Mrs. Igor has a video message for us. There you go, ma'am.
Deputy Minister, Ambassador, dear partners and colleagues. I'm pleased to join you today at the Turkey launch of the 2020 Human Development Report entitled Human Development and the Anthropocene. Since 1990, when we started measuring human development, the world has made significant progress. Almost 1 billion people have been lifted out of extreme poverty in the last 3 decades. However, this progress has come at a high price, and this price being a by now self-destructive level of pressures we humans place on our planet. The world has witnessed a steady increase in the number of natural disasters stemming from the climate crisis. These disasters, coupled with increasing social imbalances, and create a vicious cycle of inequalities and unsustainability. The way forward requires addressing both problems together and at the same time. Now, we need to ask ourselves how this can be done. And the Human Development Report we are launching today is precisely presenting answers to this question by introducing an experimental Human Development Index, which is adjusted for planetary pressures. This index shows that no country has managed to combine high human development and low planetary pressures yet. Instead, reliance on fossil fuels and consumerism that come with prosperity has generated unsustainable increases in greenhouse gas emissions and ecological footprints. So therefore, and once we adjust for the planetary pressures, current Human Development Index values for many countries in the high and very high category of human development drop sharply. But this does not mean that we should give up. Instead, we need to find ways to continue to advance development while reducing the degradation and unsustainable exploitation of our physical environment. The HDR shows how this can be done by improving incentives and changing social norms to ensure that we work together with rather than against nature. In particular, the report identifies 20 nature-based solutions that can deliver 37% of the greenhouse gas reductions needed by 2030 in order to keep global warming below the 2 degrees centigrade. 2/3 of these solutions are linked to forests and mainly reforestation and improved forest management. The IMF estimates that fossil fuel subsidies cost over 5 trillion a year, or 6.5% of global GDP. Reducing or ending these subsidies and redeploying the resources in protecting natural and social capital are key to financing sustainable development. We have to create market-based incentives so that fossil fuels are no longer less expensive than renewable energy. Let me conclude by saying that I'm very pleased to note that Turkey is advancing in the Human Development Index ranking. Between 1990 and 2019, Turkey's HDI value increased by more than 40%. UNDP's resident representative in Turkey, Mr. Claudio Tomasi, will present the details in a short while. Just as Turkey has been a good model for many countries in advancing human development, I really hope that it will set an equally good example by reducing its planetary pressures and showing how we can all best respond to the challenges of the Anthropocene. I thank you very much and wish you a very good discussion.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Ege. Let me remind you that you had a chance of giving us your questions for the Q&A session after the couple of panels that we're going to have. We're going to have a Q&A session. It's an important session for us. Please continue and keep sending your questions to us. And I would like to give the floor to now Mr. Akif Özkaldı, Deputy Minister of Food and Agriculture in Turkey. The floor is yours. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to extend my best regards to each and every one of you on behalf of myself and on behalf of my institution. This is the Human Development Report 2020 launching event, and it's a great pleasure for me to be with you in this event. As you know, this report was published for the first time 30 years ago, and in the meantime, until today, in parallel with the changing global conditions, the scope of the report and also the evaluation points in the reports evolved as well. In fact, that is a piece of work that is done by UNDP. In fact, it shows that the human development does not only have economic aspects, but also it has different aspects, just like the quality of life and also adaptation and alignment with nature, etc. As regards the results of human development, when we consider the situation of Turkey, we can see the following. Until 2020, Turkey used to be ranked together with the mid-level countries. First, Turkey stepped up into the high-level countries. And since 2019, in fact, Turkey ranks among the countries with a very high level of development, as it has just been mentioned by the previous speaker. It's a great pleasure for us. And this is a positive improvement for us. We're happy about this, but of course, in order to have further improvement and in order to make this improvement sustainable, we need to work a lot, and I have to underline this fact. Year 2020 has been an extraordinary year for the whole humanity, distinguished audience. In fact, our generation never experienced this pandemic before, and now we have to struggle with this. And on our nature, on our planet, we had already imposed some pressure, and the natural wild, in fact, taught us lessons. All of a sudden, and our system and the policies for setting up the system have to be reviewed now by us. The climate change, biodiversity, and similar concepts are becoming more and more important day by day. And in today's speech, I would like to inform you briefly about the activities that are carried out in our ministry. Increasing population, industrialization, unsustainable production and consumption patterns increase the pressure on the natural systems around the world. As it is mentioned in the report, without creating heavy pressure on the nature, there is no country that can achieve a very high level of human development. The Human Development Report 2020 in fact says that if we do not reduce the heavy pressure on the nature, we cannot talk about an ultimate human development. And in this scope, the sustainable development goals are important in dealing with all kinds of global crises. So these are also important guidelines and roadmaps for us even today in these circumstances. So the destruction of ecosystem, global pandemic, and many other problems, in fact, force countries to be more effective and act with the approach of leaving no one behind and to get aligned with the nature. Now, let me explain that as the ministry, all the planning that we are making, we adopt the approach of sustainability, and it's always among our fundamental principles. If the development models are ignoring the natural systems, then we will continue paying heavy prices, just we are doing today, especially biodiversity and preservation of natural life and resources and wildlife. elimination of pandemics like COVID-19, they are all linked and associated, and we can see it obviously today, as our President, His Excellency, mentioned in the General Assembly of UN, against all events that threaten international community. We need to combat together, and we need to stand tight and side by side and close the ranks. In fact, we became the host of the Conference of the Parties of the UN Convention to Combat Desertification, and also we will be the host of the 16th Conference of the Parties to the Convention on Biological Diversity in 2022. In fact, we prepared a biological inventory and biodiversity monitoring project. We're implementing an 81 project. We have a national biodiversity database, which is called the NOS Arc. Many species are entered in it. So preserving the biodiversity and combating the climate change, in fact, relies heavily on our forest assets. Again, under the auspices of His Excellency President, we made a decision last year, and the 11th of November, was announced as the National Forestation Day, and we launched a campaign, A Breath for Future. During the last 1.5 decades, Turkey has become one of the rare countries that significantly improved its existing forests. So with this campaign, A Breath for Future, in November 2019, more than 13 million young trees were planted. And also we broke many records, just like the highest number of trees planted in 1 minute. And about 30 countries participated this year's event, and now it has become an international event. So in conclusion, once again, I would like to highlight one fact. I just gave you some examples, and just like the examples show us, as the Ministry of Food and Agriculture, we would like to attain the Sustainable Development Goals all together, and we would like to act in balance with the nature, and we would like to ensure human development in parallel. And the results and fruits of this event will contribute to us in attaining the Sustainable Development Goals. This is my wish. Once again, I would like to give you my most sincere regards, and I would like to thank you. And soon we're going to listen to Mr. Claudio Tomasi. He's going to present the Human Development Report 2020, and after his presentation, I have to leave you because I have another event to attend, but other representatives from my ministry will be here to follow the event. Thank you very much. With my best and most sincere remarks. Mr. Özkaldı, thank you very much. And you spoke about the climate change and the preservation of biodiversity, and you talk about and you informed us about the steps that are taken by Turkey, and all these steps are very helpful and promising for us. As Mr. Minister has just mentioned, now we're going to listen to the Human Development Report, and the resident representative of UNDP is going to speak. Mr. Claudio Tomasi, the floor is yours, sir.
Deputy Minister, Ambassador, colleagues, partners and friends, thanks for joining us today in the Turkey launch of the 2020 Human Development Report, following yesterday's inspiring global launch hosted by Sweden. Let me thank you, Ambassador, once more on behalf of UNDP for your partnership. As you have heard from our keynote speakers, this is a timely contribution that provides a concrete opportunity to analyze, discuss and find solutions to the defining issue of our era, the coexistence of humans and the planet. As the UN Secretary General has repeatedly pointed out, the biggest imperative of this century is for us to make peace with nature. So let me walk you through this report to discover together what this means from the perspective of human development. 30 years ago, the Human Development Index caused an authentic earthquake in the mainstream view of development as economic growth. Now, it is widely accepted that development means much more than income. It means education, it means health, it means the freedom to choose and the opportunity to be heard. Now, in 2020, in the midst of the worst crisis in a generation, caused by the pandemic, we argue that it's time to move forward and advocate for a human development that reverses the pressure we have been putting on our planet and that is writing us off. A human development that works with nature, a human development that guarantees options for our and the next generations as well. As you will see, what is crystal clear is what we need to chart new bold paths, because we have been moving in the opposite direction. The good news is that we have the means to do that. We have the knowledge, we have the resources. What we need is to come together and agree on a set of changes, first and foremost in terms of values, norms, and institutions. What seems impossible is not only an opportunity, but is an imperative. Agenda 2030, the Sustainable Development Goals, and the Paris Agreement show us the way. So let's start this quick journey through the age of humans, the Anthropocene, trying to understand together how to navigate it. Let's start with the big picture. Our society and our planet are flashing red. For the first time in history, instead of the planet shaping humans, humans are shaping the planet. The pressure is so great that scientists argue we are in a new geological age, the Anthropocene, the age of humans. We have made incredible progress. We have improved the health, education, and livelihoods of billions. But our actions, particularly our dependence on fossil fuels and material consumption, are driving not just climate change and biodiversity collapse, but ocean acidification, air and water pollution, and land degradation. We are destabilizing the very systems upon which we rely on for survival at unprecedented speed and scale. Consider climate change. 2020 Atlantic hurricane season either set new records or was on the verge of doing so, both for the numbers of storms and their strengths. Within the past year, extraordinary fires have scorched enormous areas of Australia, Brazil, Russia, and west coast of the USA. In Turkey, there were more than 900 climate-related disasters in 2019, the highest value ever. Lately, we experienced a dust storm in Ankara, a deadly flood in Giresun, and hail events in Istanbul. The planet's biodiversity is in crisis. Almost 70% of wildlife may have been lost since 1970. Many believe we are at the beginning of a mass extinction event, the sixth in the history of the planet, and the first to be caused by an organism, by us. Of course, we cannot mention 2020 without mentioning COVID-19, very much a symbol of what the Anthropocene has in store for us. Let's remember that the COVID-19 pandemic, which almost certainly sprang from wildlife, is the latest harrowing consequence of planetary imbalances. Scientists have long warned that diseases will emerge more often from interaction between people and wildlife, interaction that have steadily increased in scale and intensity, squeezing ecosystems so hard that deadly viruses spill out. The novel coronavirus is not the first such virus, and it will not be the last. COVID-19 has spread quickly around an interconnected world, taking root wherever it has landed and thriving especially in the cracks of society, exploiting and exacerbating a myriad of inequalities in the human development. In too many cases, those cracks have hamstrung efforts to control the virus. And it is a human development crisis. As this figure shows, as early as May, we showed that pandemic fallout on education, health, and income was already threatening to reverse overall progress in human development for the first time since we began writing the Human Development Report 30 years ago. Now, as COVID shows, the strain on our planet mirrors the strain facing many of our society. This is not mere coincidence. Planetary and social imbalances exacerbate one another. As last year's Human Development Report made plain, many inequalities in human development have been increasing and continue to do so. As we were discussing 1 year ago, the picture of inequalities was already bleak, with people disengaging, buying out rather than buying in, and participating, taking the streets to protest injustices, sometimes in a violent way. Now, COVID-19 adds to this situation, and climate change, among other dangerous planetary level changes, will only make them worse. Inequalities reflect not only the unequal consequences of dangerous planetary change, but also the gross imbalances of power and opportunity that stand in the way of finding solutions. Already blighted by every more hurricanes and wildfires, the poorest countries in the world could experience up to 100 more days of extreme weather each year by 2100. While vulnerability to the impacts of natural disaster, from storms to famine, is highest in those countries where inequalities are already highest. Although the land cared for by the indigenous people in the Amazon absorbs on a per person basis the equivalent of carbon dioxide emitted by the richest 1% of the people in the world, indigenous peoples continue to face hardship, persecution, and discrimination and have little voice in decision making. When we look at our development models, while we have made tremendous progress in human development, we must also recognize that development has very often come at the planet's expense. This graph shows us that the human development trends to go hand in hand with high resource use. If we looked at greenhouse gases, we would see a very similar history. No country in the world has yet achieved very high human development without putting an immense strain on the planet. But we could do, and we could be the first generation to right this wrong. That is the next frontier of human development. As we have heard, this is the 30th anniversary of the Human Development Report. And so it is timely to refresh the human development concept and metrics for a new geologic approach, showcasing why they can contribute to addressing the interconnected challenges of our time. What is new? This is not another sustainability report. It goes beyond needs, beyond sustaining, beyond summarizing well-known policy options, focuses on how we can expand human development in balance with the planet. It moves thinking from solving discrete problems to navigating complex, interconnected social and ecological systems. It connects the dots, from inequalities to COVID-19 to climate change. And it argues for just transformation. It positions the recovery from COVID-19 as an opportunity to jumpstart this transformation. But coming to the context, how does this report help? The report has three parts. First, it looks at what human development means in the Anthropocene, arguing that we need a great transformation. Second, it looks at what might be the mechanism to catalyze the transformation. Social norms, incentives and regulation, and working with, not against, nature. Third, a new era requires new measurements. The report introduces a new index to better reflect development in the Anthropocene, the Planetary Pressures Adjusted Human Development Index. Now, starting with the first part, this report argues that three principles provide the bedrock for transformation. They offer a compass to help navigate the Anthropocene. They argue that working together in the pursuit of equity, innovation, and stewardship of nature can steer action towards the transformational changes needed to advance human development in the Anthropocene. If humanity puts a greater weight on this principle when thinking about the future, that is, if equity, innovation, and stewardship become central to what it means to live a good life, then we argue that human flourishing can happen alongside the easing of pressure on the planet. Coming to the second part of the report, we argue that systemic change will not happen overnight, nor will it become from pushing a policy lever. COVID-19 shows this all too clearly. What started as a health challenge turned into a human development crisis. The report identifies three building blocks to create real, lasting change: working with, not against nature, improving incentives, and changing social norms. So, first, nature-based solutions. We must recognize that we are part of nature, not separated from it. Solutions that work with, not against nature, can help both people and the planet to prosper. A regenerating forest, for example, absorbs carbon and protects wildlife. It can provide a sustainable source of food to those who live there and generate the rain that provides fresh water for those living away. Some 20 nature-based solutions could deliver up to 37% of the emission reductions needed by 2030 to keep warming below the 2 degrees Celsius. When it comes to Turkey, UNDP and other UN agencies have been long-time advocates towards nature-based solution in the country, contributing to the stewardship of nature for people, for the planet, and for the future. Our long-lasting partnership with the Ministry of Agriculture and Forests, Turkey became the world's #3 country in adequate forest land after China and India during the last decade. New forest management plans using latest softwares provides direct contribution not only to carbon pools, but also to disaster risk reduction due to less forest fires and pests, to economy with using wood at construction and energy sector, and also to nature itself with regulation of water and carbon cycles. We also promote greener models of agricultural production to reduce water usage and carbon emission while increasing productivity, including with natural and local solutions from farm to fork. Coming to the second block, the incentives. Too often, the incentives and regulation that influence decision-making promote rather than prevent planetary damage. Getting carbon pricing right is a critical example. The world spent over 300 billion in 2019 subsidizing our dependence on fossil fuels and making it harder for clean power to compete. Removing these subsidies could reduce carbon emissions by more than a quarter. Coming to Turkey, as early as in the 70s, UNDP worked for the establishment of a solar energy center and has been championing renewable energy and energy efficiency for more than 50 years now. In recent years, with the General Directorate of Forestry, we have been working on setting up solar power generation facility in the forest villages. Beyond solar power generation, we aim to create a financial mechanism to introduce forest villagers with solar power technology. This will not only reduce carbon footprint, but also increase economic and social aspects of the more vulnerable segment of the society in rural areas. While creating incentives on solar power, we also work with the Ministry of Industry and Technology to create new regulation options for medium and small enterprises to revise their electric motors with energy efficiency ones. Incentives and regulation are two key tools for securing just transition and making our commitments without leaving anyone behind. Now, moving to the third block, the new norms. Everyone has a part to play. Studies suggest that 80% of people already think it is important to protect the planet, but fewer than half are likely to take action. Why? Perhaps because we are influenced by the social norms of those around us. Yet this can change very quickly. Just look at the many millions of people who now wear a mask every time they leave their home. Unthinkable just 1 year ago. Similarly, in Turkey, after a policy change related to zero waste target, usage of plastic bags dropped 77%, with some 60,000 tons of greenhouse gas reduction in a year. This shows how can we quickly change and adapt ourselves to the new norm once common good for people and the planet is at stake. There are also new norms we would never ever imagine, just how we live now due to COVID-19. During COVID-19, despite all challenges we have, measures taken result in another common good for people and the planet. Air pollution has decreased around 30% in cities of Turkey. Interesting again, Turkish people think that climate change is more dangerous than COVID-19, according to a survey made in November 2020 at national level. New norms can influence us, as well as we can influence social norms. Social contract needs to be rewritten with the planet. With this view, we launch a campaign for people, the planet, and the future. Millions who have participated in this UNDP-EU joint campaign in Turkey committed for a behavioral change by saying, "We are the climate, we will change." As we said before, a new era, the Anthropocene, requires new metrics of progress. The report presents an adjustment of the HDI for planetary pressure. The Planetary Pressure Adjusted Human Development Index, the PHDI. It is an experimental index. It takes the original Human Development Index and adjusts it according to how much pressure each nation is per capita, placing on the planet in two areas, their CO2 emission and their material footprint. Of course, there are many other planetary pressures that are also critically important. For countries on the lower end of the human development spectrum, the impact of the adjustment is generally small. For countries with high or very high human development, gaps open up, reflecting the ways that their development paths impact the planet. These countries are the green dots on the graph. The PHDI is painting a less rosy but clearer assessment of human progress today. For example, more than 50 countries drop out of the very high human development group, reflecting their dependence on fossil fuels and material footprint. The PHDI has not been calculated to name and shame nations. It is experimental and is meant, like the Human Development Index 30 years ago, to encourage public debate and shine a light on success stories that offer insights that others can follow. Now, let's take a look at the global picture. This graph shows the trajectory countries need to follow if they are to progress in balance with the planet. Every nation should seek to increase its human development, longer lives, more education, higher living standards, while reducing the pressure we place on the planet. Some countries are moving already in the right direction, and there is much to learn from them. But no country has yet achieved the sweet spot of the very human development and low planetary pressure. But that doesn't mean it is impossible. This report argues it is, and it offers guidance on how human development can move us in the right direction. Now, let's move from the global perspective to take a look at where we stand, at Turkey. The picture we see is good in terms of general progress. Turkey's Human Development Index for the 2019 is 0.82, which puts the country in a very high human development category, positioning it at 54th position out of 189 countries and territories. This is the second year in a row that Turkey is in the very high human development category. When we look at the 30 years of HDI measurement, we see a steady increase over years, whereby Turkey's HDI value increased by 40%. In the table A, you can see the progress in each one of the indicators. In the 30 years, Turkey's life expectancy at birth increased by 13 years, mean years of schooling by 3, and expected years of schooling by 7. And the GNI per capita more than doubled between 1990 and 2019. However, when we take a more granular look and we factor in inequalities, the panorama changes. As we can see, when we discount for inequality, the Human Development Index shows a loss of 16.7%. To give us an idea, the average loss due to inequality for very high HDI countries is around 11%. In particular, when we analyze gender inequality, the differences within society become more apparent. As we can see in the second table, Turkey's ranking drops to 68 when it's accounted for the Gender Inequality Index. In Turkey, 17% of parliamentary seats are held by women. 50% of adult women have reached at least a secondary level of education, compared to 72% of their male counterparts. Female participation in the labor market is 34% compared to 72% for men. This is confirmed by another index, the Gender Development Index, which is defined as the ratio of the female to the male Human Development Index. 2019 female HDI value places the country in the group 4, in the category of country with medium to low equality in HDI achievement between men and women. As we said previously, the new planetary pressure adjusted HDI, the PHDI, adjusts the standard HDI by a country's level of carbon dioxide emissions and material consumption, each on a per capita basis. The PHDI provides a guiding metric towards advancing human development while easing planetary pressures, a combination that today corresponds to an empty corner when human development is contrasted with indicators of planetary pressure. The report showed that no country in the world has achieved the magic combination, or at least has not achieved it yet. It should be seen as an incentive for transformation. As we can see, Turkey's PHDI is 0.746, and Turkey ranked 44 in the world. In the table, you can also see the top 5 upward and downward movers to have an idea. The message here is that Turkey loses 9% of the total Human Development Index value when planetary pressure is accounted for. Since other high human development countries lose more, Turkey ends up by going up by 10 positions in this special ranking. The half-full glass is that Turkey is exerting less pressure on the planet when compared to similar countries in terms of HDI. The half-empty is that 1/10 of the human development potential is lost when planetary pressure is included. Now, let us reject the idea that we must choose between people and trees. Humans are part of nature, not separated from it. The earth is the foundation of human life and progress. There is simply no choice to make. We save both people and trees, or we save neither. What is more, the way forward is not only about expanding people's capability to lead lives they value, that is expanding choices available to people. We must also carefully consider two other critical dimensions of human development: agency, which is the ability to have control over our lives, and values, what choices we desire the most. Like a three-legged stool, capabilities, agency, and values are inseparable in how we think about human development in the context of the Anthropocene. A focus on capabilities, agency, and values can reorient our approach to the Anthropocene so people and the planet can prosper together. Ladies and gentlemen, let me conclude by closing the cycle where I started and restate that this is time to chart bold new paths. We are the last generation able to make a difference in this sense. If we miss this opportunity, there will not be a second one. COVID-19 is showing this to us. Systemic shocks require systemic responses. Where going back to normal is no longer an option. We must focus on building forward better now. This is possible, and this is practical. 20 nature-based solutions could transform industries from agriculture and transport to tourism, health, and finance, delivering 37% of the emission reductions the world needs to meet the Paris commitments. With renewables now cheaper than fossil fuels, a future driven by clean energy is not science fiction, it's a sound, ethical, and financial choice. Collectively, we can pursue solutions embedded in changing social norms, improving incentives, and working with, not against nature. Nonetheless, the buck stops with governments to provide the leadership that helps all of us, from civil society to the private sector, navigate this new age. It also stops when multilateral agreements are collectively reached and respected, and when institutions and norms can change accordingly. It stops when individuals buy in, do not buy out. Let me conclude by saying that we strongly believe that human development that tackles inequality and empowers people offers a pathway towards the much needed balance. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tomasi, for this very comprehensive presentation, for sharing the system of the report. And he also shared some positive developments when it comes to Turkey, but there is this gender inequality issue, unfortunately. But hopefully Turkey will be ranked better when it comes to gender equality very soon. Please pose your questions in the Q&A section, and I am collecting your questions, and I'll be posing your questions to the panelists. Now we have a panel for a more equitable planet. Well, let me correct. We have some videos from the goodwill ambassadors of the UNDP. So let us have the video.
Throughout time, the planet has shaped all life.
The planet has shaped all life.
The planet has shaped all life.
But now, in the era of the human, we are shaping the planet.
And truthfully, we are not doing a good job at it yet. Our actions are putting a lot of pressure on the world. Just look at 2020 with COVID-19, extreme weather, and rampant wildfires. People have created this mess, but we can fix it.
Empowered people can become agents of their own destiny. The world may seem stuck in its own ways, but we can take actions to create a new normal, whether that's expanding the role of women in society or using cleaner energy.
In too many countries, fossil fuels remain the primary source of energy, but clean alternatives like solar power will help reduce our carbon emissions. These alternatives need to be made accessible and affordable without using too much of other finite resources.
And we must learn to harness the power of nature at the same time as we protect its beauty and wonder. Moving to protect, sustainably manage and restore ecosystems in a way that promotes well-being.
Too often, the decisions of a few people or countries hurt the most vulnerable people across the world. For all of us to flourish now and into the future, we must understand that we are all connected. The choices you make impact the whole world around you.
Shaping the planet means
taking bold steps.
Bold steps for humans to survive and thrive in this new era.
If we are going to change the world,
we need you.
We need you.
We need you, our global leaders, to take bold action now.
We listen to our advocates and goodwill ambassadors. Thanks for the messages. And now we're going to start our panel about human development in Anthropocene. And the moderator will be Hatice Dinç, Natural Resources and Biodiversity Cluster Lead. She teaches she is going to host Professor Meyrem Beklioğlu, Metro Department of Biological Sciences, and Professor Levent Kurnaz, Director of the Center for Climate Change and Policy Studies at Boğaziçi University. The floor is yours. Thank you. Hello. Welcome all participants. Thank you for being here with us. We have listened to the speeches. The Human Development Report says that in the history of our planet, for the first time, the red lights are flashing, and this is a unique moment, unprecedented. The scientists, in fact, call this age Anthropocene. The human activities will change the destiny of future. It started with the Industrial Revolution, and at an increasing pace, we are making decisions that will change our fate. And with our preferences, we decide on the fate of the government. We do this for prosperity, for a decent life. But with the fossil fuels that we consume for this purpose, with the overconsumption of depletion of natural resources, we have growth attacks, we create wars, and we just change the settings of this planet. The land is degraded, we lose our oceans, the land has more assets, so biodiversity, the genes, ecosystems, in fact, are being lost irreversibly. This is the conclusion. Let's make a pause here and think about the biodiversity. Biodiversity is the system that supports our life. Of course, it will hit us back. It is inevitable, but ecosystems, the species, they have an ultimate right to exist. We wipe away the historical roles played. There are different examples. So now non-living entities are being granted rights in order to defend their right to exist. For example, in New Zealand, it happened. So we are in search of a decent, healthy life. Maybe we will lose this search as well. Now, I'd like to ask distinguished professors. The professors, in fact, are following up the phenomenon very closely in terms of policy and science. And what would you like to say? What are the solutions that you can offer, and what is our position? Mrs. Meryem Beklioğlu, can I start with you? Hello, I think I cannot turn on my video, maybe because of a technical problem. Anyway, I will start. First of all, I would like to thank you for the kind invitation. That's an important day, and I am glad for being here on this day. I am a freshwater ecologist. I work in Metro University Biodiversity is a multi-layer topic. So for us, it seems like the number of species that are living on the planet. However, it is about the diversity of the species, diversity in their characteristics, ecosystem diversity, and the diversity of the processes of the ecosystem. There are many layers. When we are looking for answers to the question, in fact, we're really challenged in making the definitions. How many species, for example, we know about 1.7 million species, but it is said that there are more than 10 million species. This is just to give an example about the diversity of species, but there is very interesting research. For example, when you get one spoon of soil, you talk about 10,000 to 50,000 different species. People living in urban centers are disconnected from the nature. In fact, Claudio Tomosi put it very well. Either the economic growth or the nature, two options. No, this is not the case. This cannot be the solution. And the biodiversity looks like nice animals that you see in documentaries if you live in an urban place. But your drinking water, the air that you breathe in, they mean biodiversity. So all these ecosystem services that make us live, they're all affected. And with the organisms, with the services, there are certain relations and also the biodiversity, the characters, they're all linked, and I am researching this topic. So each species that exists in the nature, in fact, ethically and morally has to exist. They don't have to be functional. So maybe there are some problems ethically about this, but if you ask the question, is it economy or nature, then you have to convince who is asking this question. It may be a politician or someone else. Think about ecosystem services, flood control, and just like Claudia explained it, there were many disasters in Turkey this year. Turkey was destroyed by the floods, for example. It's an important area. In fact, the drinking water, cleaning of air, and the absorption of carbon, and direct services, salination, or pollination. If we lose all the bees, who is going to do the fertilization? And soil production, biodiversity, again, they are linked. What about the cultural aspects? And what about the aesthetics? What can replace the pleasure of walking in the woods, hearing the birds sing? All these services that are provided to us by the ecosystem, worth twice more as the GDP. And if you lose all the bees, the cost will be $15 billion in the United States. If some species are lost, it will cost Europe 450 million euros. Excessive use of land, excessive use of water for urbanization and for agriculture. These are the most recent problems, and we encounter these problems because we cannot find a common denominator. Excessive consumption, excessive depletion, and the lack of possibility to replace the lost resources, and global warming. These are common problems. If everyone lives like the people in Ghana lives, in fact, the Earth can accommodate 26 billion people. But if we keep living in this way, that will not be possible. So this is the sixth big disappearance that we are going through. Maybe IPS, this is a policy partner for the ecosystems. In fact, we will soon lose 1 million species. Without Anthropocene, it would happen in 100,000 years. And however, in the last century, 543 big mammalian species were lost. If we were not in the Anthropocene, that would have been lost in 10,000 years. Also, let me ask Professor Levent. We're talking about developing with the nature, not against the nature, and they say that it is possible. And let's look from the policy perspective, and let's look from the national perspectives. Where is the solution?
I have to disagree with Mariam, actually. It was really a question mark in my mind how many people the world can accommodate, because we are reproducing very, very fast as human beings. Let me give you a very simple example from Turkey, if I may. In Ankara, Istanbul, Edirne, in a big majority of our cities, we have this water problem, unfortunately. I asked my students, how many people were there? What was the population at the proclamation of the Republic of Turkey? 15 million is the answer. Now, there are 6 times more people, population in Turkey. And back then, the per capita water supply was 6-fold more compared today. And if the population growth goes on that way, we are going to receive only 1/8 of the water supply compared to today. So if we go unsustainably as it is, we cannot get out of trouble. We cannot get our heads and hands out of trouble. Because, you know, the borders of the planet are pushed by us, and we cannot really comprehend the limits. How much we should push, to what extent we should go. We do not comprehend it, and we do not understand it. As Professor Mariam said, biodiversity is important, but there is also the case of functional diversity, about which we have no idea at all. And you know, climate change is an important problem. Paris Agreement is such a nice agreement, but all the states of the countries of the world should comply with what Paris Agreement has to say. Only they comply, we are going to achieve only 3.5 Celsius degree of reduction, increase of temperature, actually. This is why it seems that we are not going on the right direction. So I request one sentence from each of you. What is the path to take from now on? Professor Mariam, what do you have to say? The thing is, sustainable production and sustainable consumption and restoration of ecosystems is the answer, is the path that we need to take. Nature-based solutions we need to take on, especially as a consumer, myself as a citizen and consumer at the same time. Reducing the meat consumption would be one of the best ideas to go for, because you know, meat production is something industrial, and also a big forest in Amazon are chopped down, and those trees are turned into maize production and soya production, exported to other countries, and ending in meat production. Well, unfortunately, livestock breeding is something industrial today. I think we need to reduce the consumption of meat and go for local production, local consumption. But sustainable production is that much important. Konya Closed Basin is semi-arid, for example. Well, we can produce sugar beet using irrigated farming there. And there we lost an area of 1,500 square kilometers. This is nothing to do with sustainable production. Sustainable production and consumption is required, and we need to do restoration of the land, restoration of the ecosystems in the Anthropocene. Well, we favor restoration. Thank you very much for the nice ideas, actually. Professor Levin, what do you have to say? Just in one sentence, how do you see the exit? Is there any exit? The citizens of the world, as the citizens of the world, we need to vote properly, because the big majority of the world is governed by democracy. Whatever the states are doing around the world, they are doing that because of the votes that we had for them. We have to vote properly for the governors, for the managers, rulers of our country, so that they can take the right path to go. Thank you very much. It was a pleasure to have you. Aisha, you have the floor. Thank you very much. I've listened to the professors. Thank you very much. Of course, we have to follow the path of the science. Scientists are warning us for decades. Hopefully, we and the next generations will continue to listen to the scientists attentively. Hopefully, we will be more environmentally sensitive. Professors, thank you very much. Please do not stop warning people, because you are speaking evidence-based. There is another question that we need to ask in this panel, which is, what is it for us? We need to remember our responsibilities, and this panel, we are going to question our responsibilities. Moderator will be Assistant Resident Representative of UNDP Turkey, Seher Alacaci Arıner, and INGEV President Vural Çakır, Sezai Hazır, Habitat Association President, and also TEPAV Managing Director Professor Güven Sak, and also Chair of the Turkish Business Council for Sustainable Development, and Executive VP of Garanti Bank, Ebru Dilder Edin, will be taking the floor as the panelist. You have the floor. Thank you very much, Aisha. I'd like to welcome and greet all the panelists and guests. Welcome once again. Mr. Tomasi explained the report very well, and also in the first panel we collected opinions of distinguished professors. Let's look at Turkey, the position in Turkey. For the second time, Turkey is ranked in the very high development category, Turkey. Since 1990s, lots of developments and progress happened, but there is also room for improvement, including gender equality, the area of gender equality. But including Turkey, no country around the world could get in the very high development category without straining the planet. That is why, in this panel, we are going to talk about lessons learned for Turkey and what needs to be done for a proper transformation. We're going to listen to the representatives of the private sector as well as NGOs. We have 20 minutes in this panel, and there will be 5 minutes allocated for each panelist. I'd like to give the first floor to Ms. Ebru Dilder Edin. Ms. Ebru, the report puts forward 3 milestones for sustainable development. Incentives, social norms, also working with the nature. In this respect, what needs to be done in Turkey? What is the perspective of the private sector as well as the NGO? We're going to hear from your side. Thank you very much. Thank you for bringing us together. As you know, with 2020, we observed very radical changes brought about by COVID-19. Climate change crisis was there, but it was made more visible because of COVID-19. For the first time, the buildings, machineries, human-made things outweighed the nature, actually. The plants, the ecosystem, all of them were outweighed by human-made things, unfortunately. And this is one of the evidence that we moved into the age of humans. Both climate change and COVID-19 brings about challenges, and for us to overcome the challenges, we need to make some investments. This is why we are listening to the 30th HDR today. Both countries, NGOs, private sector, they have to be focused and balanced in recommending solutions for the challenges. Stakeholders of the financial system should also chip in for a greener and inclusive ecosystem. I think we're all committed to do so. This is why business, the governments and international organizations, they have started to face a sustainable agenda, and this is the way forward. And this is why one of the milestones of the NHDR today is joining hands with the nature, and this commitment is in line with this idea of joining hands with the nature. I can say that the transformation required for us to survive can only be achieved through joint and collective action by public, by private, by NGOs. In this period of time, we have continued to do effective projects and actions. We provided some opportunities for the business. Turkish circular economy platform that they kicked off this year was one of the examples, and also. Plastic initiative, business plastic initiative was one of the examples in this respect. And you know, in Europe, similar initiatives have been adopted. As you very well know, for a sustainable economy in the EU, there are certain commitments we adopted there, as well as EU Green Deal. European Union, when it is signing bilateral agreements, they say that the precondition is the commitment to the Paris Agreement. This is why they say, and we say we need to work hand in hand with the nature, not against the nature. This is compulsory to work with the nature, both for the public and private sector. 50% of our export goes to the European Union member states. That is why the new arrangement to be made in line with the Green Deal will also be definitive when it comes to relations between Turkey and the European Union. And there are also carbon neutrality targets. You know, Apple, Siemens, Climate. We've heard about them, but there are companies in Turkey setting targets for carbon neutrality.
So the incentive mechanisms are very, very important. And in fact, in order to ensure the adaptation, necessary incentives have to be put into implementation on the public side, and that transformation will be accelerated. And also, I would like to share my ideas about the social norms and the transformation as it appears in the report. In the human development category, we rank the 54th in 189 countries, although we rank over the average. In fact, we are below the average score of the countries that are ranking high. So our horizon should be aligned with the high-ranking countries in topics like gender inequality. In fact, we rank low, and in fact, the female have 34% participation in the labor force. Of course, there are certain environmental opportunities, economic opportunities, but what about the social opportunities? Social inclusion should also be underlying the business model. In fact, the business world, gender equality and opportunities are greatly important for this. In OECD countries, in fact, women and girls are more successful than men and boys. However, still there are very limited number of women working in science, engineering, and other departments, and there's still unequal pay in favor of men. So it's important that important social works have to be carried out as SKD Turkey. We have the Equal Steps platform. We would like to promote the importance of women participation in the labor force, women employment. Our members have very important projects. For example, guarantee BBV, for the first time in the world, created an important mechanism that is the credit gender inequality. So if the company makes some improvements regarding gender, in fact, in the available cash and non-cash loans and commissions, some improvements can be offered. So this is some kind of incentive mechanism for the bank in order to make sure of gender inequality. Limak, PNG, Vodafone, Yıldız group of companies also have been very successful recently in the same field. Of course, we can witness very bright developments, but still there are many steps to be taken. In fact, we need to convert the risks into opportunities, and we need to focus on this. In fact, if we can adapt quickly, if we can have innovative solutions, then we will be one step ahead. This is an important opportunity for the business world. And in terms of risk, if the organization cannot adapt, then the business will not be sustained. That is the possibility. It is important for all business lines, the public, private sector, civil society, academia. They need to work hand in hand, and they need to be present in joint platforms where they can create common solutions. As SKD Turkey, also I would like to talk about our cyclic economy platform, and also the plastics, improvements in the business world, and many other platforms that we have. And with all these examples, I would like to announce that we are ready for cooperations in the business world. Thank you very much. Thank you, dear Ebru, for your nice contribution. And I would like to continue with Professor Dr. Güven Sak. Human development approach says that economic the growth is not the goal, but the instrument. And since 1990s, we've been working with this principle. In our recent report, we underline the importance of working with nature, not against nature. Especially with the COVID-19 crisis, we have seen a preview of a big crisis, very important socioeconomic impacts resulted. So what are the steps to be taken? Okay, hello. In the Human Development Index, in fact, Turkey also seems to have taken a positive leap, just like it did last year. So that's a pleasing development. But with the COVID-19, I believe that on our agenda now, new areas are opening. So firstly, I believe the climate change agenda, in fact, used to be an important mega trend, but with COVID-19, I can positively say that it turned into an area that is open to all the effects and contributions, as it was just mentioned. In fact, Europe it has already decided on its economic growth based on the Green Deal. In fact, Turkey's economy is integrated into the European economy. So very quickly, a green transformation program has to be designed by Turkey that has become obligatory, because we need to maintain our performance, and especially for the recovery after COVID-19. It's important, and it's important to recover and restore the employment figures. So this green transformation program, in fact, will be based on new technologies, should be based on the options of new technologies. So it's about designing such a growth program. I think the first and foremost item on the agenda must be approval of the Paris Agreement by Turkey despite any factor, and then based on the new technologies, a growth process needs to be designed. So for the growth figures, possible employment impacts and carbon impacts must be studied, and new index can be created. So for example, what will be our contribution for the reduction of carbon emissions? We need to study this, and we need to determine our possible contribution. I think we need to focus on this factor. So when I look at the factor and when I look at the new highlight of this report, I can say this. And secondly, in connection with the first part, in fact, I can say that with the COVID-19, we see some fast digitalization process. Mostly from the employment perspective, there is a high probability that we can see the negative aspects. But from another point of view, and when you look at from the point of view of the steps to be taken by Turkey in order to address gender inequality, participation of women in economic activities should be focused on by Turkey, and Turkey should focus on this fact in a more intensified way. So let's look at the total number of female entrepreneurs in Turkey. They are just 9% of the all entrepreneurs, but look at the digital shopping platforms. Female entrepreneurs have a ratio of about 24% when it comes to digital and online platforms. So in Japan and Korea, different models were tried, just like they did in improving and enhancing women entrepreneurship. It is necessary to support these platforms, but how? Maybe Turkey should focus on the question how to support these platforms. I hope I could give you some concrete recommendations. Thank you, distinguished professor. These were very valuable contributions, especially together with the COVID. There are some areas which may be affected positively, and these are important areas for us. Let's continue with you. You are the president of the Executive Board of Habitat Association. In 2020 Human Development Report, we see that we need to alter our relation with the planet, and we need to have a more sustainable energy and material consumption, and each young person needs to enjoy the pleasures of work. This is highlighted. In fact, you are an NGO of Turkey that has a very broad young grassroots. Now, in order to improve the youth and improve their participation in democratic processes, you have very important activities. So for implementing the findings of the Human Development Report and about transformation of social norms and system, how can we use the youth power? Would you please talk to us? Thank you very much. Being very significant report is a great honor for us. This is the 25th year of Habitat Association. In fact, after 25 years, we believe that it is necessary to take one step beyond. And we say that we need to take the steps now, because tomorrow will be very late, because together with the pandemic, the topic of climate change now can be perceived in a better way by our community. There are many negative aspects and circumstances going on, but maybe our community's perception may be changed. And in fact, we need to change our century-old habits and behavior, because we are experiencing today what is happening, because this is just like putting your will and choices at lane of someone else. So we need to think about our education system. We need to improve our thinking analytics, and we need to reformulate our education system. So time-based and space-based education system is out of fashion. Maybe the pandemic accelerated this process. In the past, we took the economic development as basis, but we ruined the nature. We thought in a human-oriented manner, but now we see that there were negative consequences of an economic growth thinking that belonged to the past. So change of climate and pandemic also shows us the powers. So the pandemic, the climate change is not a problem of one nation. These are the problems of the whole world. We need to reveal the partnerships. The powers should partner. All the institutions, organizations should bring together and pool their opportunities and means. So from this perspective, Habitat has been working for 25 years, and we tried to improve the capacity of youth in Turkey. This is how social change can be possible, because future generations need to be used to getting engaged in decision-making processes, and that should start today. So far, we made the decisions for them. We believe that we were making the right decisions for them. That started in the family. The parents made the best decisions for them. At school, the teachers gave the best decision for them. And in the countries, the administrators and the managers always made the best decisions for them. But you know, the best decisions took us here. But from now on, they need to decide on their future, because they will be the people living in the future. So legal transformations, mechanism transformations, how to be enabled starting from today. So this is about unity of power. With this, new employment areas can be created, because 2020 youth well-being report will be published in January. But you know, it is about the change of humanity, and economic crisis is always the first item on the agenda. People are having problems with their livelihood, and in pandemic, can we turn this into an opportunity? Maybe we can, but you know, we also have the digital inequalities now. There is deep gap in opportunities. The women, the children, the low-income groups. So the civil society should go into partnerships. We need to take the burden in order to improve the situation about these gaps and inequalities. And also there's the biggest entrepreneurship network, the Global Entrepreneurship Network. They're our partner, and on Friday we are going to have a launching event. We started a very prominent partnership with the business world in Turkey. So we would like to be environmentally friendly. We don't want to destroy the nature, and economic development will not be the only element of sustainable development, and new employment areas will be created for the youth. These are our goals, but we cannot only take these steps. We also need policy changes. And the green initiatives, sustainable energy initiatives need to be supported by the government, and government incentives need to be modified in a positive way. Government prioritization is very important in this regard. In the services of the local governments, these services need to be prioritized. In the employment policies, in fact, we need to change our consumption habits. And together with the pandemic, we were still thinking in a human-oriented way. But, you know, the plastic consumption has reached the summit. It peaked because we need to protect people from the trouble, but we are ruining our future with all this plastic consumption. So, okay, maybe we should leave aside the human-oriented thinking, but we need to have a different thinking the human together with the nature, because on one side we need to improve our capabilities on the digital media, and for example, we give training to the disadvantaged groups. So far we trained 1.5 million people about these capabilities and literacy. We also have multilateral partnerships. For example, we give coding and programming training for the children. For many years UNDP has been there as a partner, and there are also women cooperatives that we support. In order to eliminate gender discrimination, we want to engage women in production, and we support the women cooperatives even financially. And we have My Sister project. And also for the digitalization, we have been partnering with Microsoft for 17 years. And we were working about use of new technologies, but also for the disadvantaged groups, and also for the entrepreneurs ecosystem. We develop new partnerships. For example, Facebook is our new partner. So we want the young people to be engaged in the decision-making mechanisms. The mechanisms are important. They need to be active in decision-making, and that can happen with policy change. And now other people should not be making decisions for the young people, but mechanisms and policies should be developed for them so that they can make their own decisions. It's time. It's high time. Thank you. Thank you, Sezai Bey. In fact, systemic transformation and social norms transformation, in fact, are two areas where the youth has a great power. I would like to thank you for the valuable information you provided. I would like to go back to Vural Çakır again. How about your technical problem?
Çözüldü herhalde. Ben kaldığım yerden hemen
I think it is. I can continue with my
devam edeyim. Evet, bize düşen nedir kısmında önemli çünkü herkes başkalarına düşenin ne olduğunu anlatmaya daha yatkınız hepimiz. İNGEV açısından insani gelişme raporlarının özel bir önemi var. Zaten İNGEV insani gelişme raporu ve insani gelişme vakfı ve insani gelişme raporları bizim geleceğimizi, durumumuzu, pozisyonumuzu ve temel misyonumuzu tanımlıyor ve ben şahsen ekip olarak bu raporlarda daha öncekilerde ve şimdikiyle konulan vizyonun iyi bir dünya için temel bir vizyon, temel bir bakış açısı olduğuna inanıyorum. Yani aslında bütün karar vericilerin ve hepimizin bu vizyonu sindirme düzeyi ve uygulama düzeyi daha iyi bir dünyaya giden yolun kolaylaştırılması anlamında da gelecek. Tabii biz insani gelişmeyi desteklemek anlamında bize düşen önümüzdeki dönemde herhalde ilk iş insani gelişme ile ilgili Türkiye'de ilçe belediyeleri ve büyükşehir belediyelerini kapsayacak olan endeksimizin tanıtımlarında bu konuyu özel bir başlık olarak almak ki Ocak ayı sonunda olacak ve bu yıl ilk kez insani gelişme Türkiye ilçeler indeksinin yanı sıra büyükşehir belediyeleri de kapsanacak ve büyükşehir belediyeleri aynı zamanda sürdürülebilir kalkınma amaçları performans göstergeleri açısından da değerlendirilmiş olacak. Bu önemli bir adım yaygınlaştırma çabalarımız, insani gelişmeyi yaygınlaştırma çabalarımız açısından. Çünkü sürdürülebilir kalkınma amaçlarının 11 tanesi çok ciddi bir şekilde yerel yönetimle ve yeni yerellikle iç içe geçiyor ve çok ciddi bir etkileşim var içinde. Ve yerel yönetimler hiç kuşkusuz vatandaşla, yurttaşla çok yakın ilişki olan yerler, çok yakın dokunabiliyorlar. Dolayısıyla bu birlikteliği sağlayabilmek ve onların aktivizasyonuna katkı yapabilmek önemli. Burada kritik bir şey var. Aslında büyükşehir belediyelerimizin hemen hepsi iklim eylem planlarına sahip. İlçe belediyelerimizin bazıları iklim eylem planı yapmış durumdalar. Aslında kapsamlı planlar bunlar. Ve birçok konuyu, biyoçeşitlilikten karbon salınımına kadar birçok konuyu kapsıyorlar. Bu iyi bir şey. Ama bu iyi bir şeyin ötesinde biraz daha adım atmamız gerekiyor. Burada bize düşen, yerel yönetimlerle birlikte bize düşen maddeleri ben 4 başlık altında topluyorum. Bir tanesi biraz odaklanmakla ilgili. Çünkü çok geniş bir alanı kapsıyoruz. Bir odak alan ve bir ya da birkaç odak alanı bölgeye, coğrafi alana göre seçmek ve özellikle odaklanmak gerekiyor. İklim eylem planları gibi şeylerde evet çok güzel irade beyanı yapıyoruz. Bütün bu alanlarda hoş şeyler de söylüyoruz. Ama bunların ikinci söyleyeceğim de şu, bunların ölçülebilir hedeflere doğru odaklanmayla birlikte ölçülebilir hedeflere dönmesi lazım. Çok basit bir şey söyleyeyim. Bütün bu endeks hazırlıklarında büyük şehirlerde bir yapay zeka ile tabii stratejik planları değerlendiriliyor. Yıllık programları değerlendiriliyor ve onun içerisinden endekste başka katkılar da yapılıyor. Gizli bir vatandaş çalışması yaptık. Yine onun sonuçları da endekse dahil. Ve sadece 30 belediyenin 15'inde kişi başına büyük şehirler belediyeleri için söylüyorum yeşil alan verisi var. Diğer 15'inde yok. Olanların standartları da farklı standartlarda. Yani ikinci nokta odaklanmakla birlikte ikinci nokta ölçülebilir hedefler koymak ve onu ölçebilir hale gelmemiz. Hem yerel yönetim tabii merkezi yönetim açısından böyle ama yerel yönetim açısından da çok önemli. Üçüncü üzerinde duracağım nokta ise belediyelerde ve yerel yönetimlerde bunlar hep çevre müdürlükleri kapsamında değerlendiriliyor ama odaklanmış ve ölçülebilir hedeflerin daha otoriter, daha yetkili, daha güçlü bir organizasyon içerisinde ele alınması ve muhtemelen belediye başkanlarının doğrudan sahipliği içerisinde o alana odaklanılması lazım. Yoksa çevre müdürlüklerinin alanları çok fazla dağılıyor. Biyoçeşitlilikse o alandaki otoriteyle bir otorite olabilmesi lazım. Ve son olarak, dördüncü olarak söyleyeceğim, biz gerçekten bu işleri aksiyona döndüreceksek, hareket kabiliyetimiz artacaksa ve genel irade beyanıyla sınırlı kalmayacaksak, seçtiğimiz ve odaklandığımız ve ölçtüğümüz bu alanda aynı zamanda sivil toplum kuruluşlarıyla çok iç içe çalışma yapmak durumundayız ve bu sivil toplum kuruluşları siyasi değil, teknik kalitesi yüksek sivil toplum kuruluşları olmalı ki gerçekten o ölçülebilir hedeflere doğru gidelim. Bunlar temel çerçeve ama şunu da söyleyerek bitireyim çünkü bu nokta hepimiz için önemli. Bütün bunlarda yol alabilmenin bir aşaması da belki sosyal norm olarak da söylenebilir. Bizim iyi yaşam kavramını yeniden tanımlayabilmemiz. Dünyada yaklaşık 7,5 milyar insanın çok büyük bir çoğunluğu iyi yaşamı daha çok tüketimle eşlemiş durumda. Hatta marka tüketimiyle daha çok tüketimle eşlemiş durumda. İyi yaşam oradan geçiyor. Yaklaşık 200 milyon şirket var. 45 bini borsaya kote ve bütün bu şirketler genetik olarak büyümekle kodlanmış durumdalar. Büyümek ve öbür yandan iyi yaşamı daha çok tüketimle eşlemek bizim üzerinde çok durmamız gereken yeni bir kavram ve iyi yaşamı tüketimle ilişkisini azaltmamız gerekiyor. Bir sosyal norm olarak tıpkı bir zamanlar işte raporda da belirtildiği gibi sigara çok normal bir şeydi, şimdi zararlı bir şey. Çok fazla tüketmek de, bugün bir gazetede okudum, bir çok özenle ballandıra anlatılmıştı. Bir iş adamımız 3 milyon liraya saat almış. Çok anlatılıyor. Bunlar artık yavaş yavaş başka bir düzene doğru gidebilmeliyiz ve biz iyi yaşamı daha çok tüketimle, daha çok üretimle, burada 200 milyon şirket eğer büyümeye çalışıyorsa sürekli bu talebe cevap vermek zor. Ve burada çok önemli bir avantajımız var. Onunla bitireyim. Pandemi dönemi bize aslında hani her şerde bir hayır vardır deriz ya, bize iyi yaşamın daha çok tüketmekle ilgili olmadığını, gardırobumuzdaki elbise sayısını ya da onların güncellenmesinin o kadar da iyi yaşamla eşlenemeyebileceğini gösterdi. Benim arkadaşlarım vardı, hep yılbaşlarında Macaristan'a gitsek mi, Paris'e mi gitsek falan diye konuşurlardı. Şimdi anladık ki iyi yaşam yılbaşında sokağa çıkıp maskesiz dolaşmak da olabiliyor bazen. Yani bütün bunların arka planında iyi yaşam kavramına hep birlikte yeniden bakmamız ve onun tüketimle ilişkisini zayıflatabilmemiz lazım. Çok teşekkürler, sağ olun.
Çok çok teşekkür ediyoruz Vural Bey. İnsani gelişmede tabii yerelin dönüş...
Human development is an area where the local can create a big transformation effect, and you will be closely followed up by us. That is the end of our panel. I would like to thank everyone for the great contribution. In fact, when we started year 2020, we thought that would be a decade for the Sustainable Development Goals. There are many steps that we will take, and they need to be concrete steps. This is what we said when we started this year. International community, public, private sector, individuals, they all need to make decisions for a better life, and we need to shape the world accordingly. This is the position that we have today. This is the point that we are standing today. As the panelists just said, with the partnerships that we can create, we can overcome all these challenges that we are facing today. Thank you all panelists, and Ayşe, over to you. Thank you, Mrs. Ser, Alacacı, Ariner. So please, participants and panelists, stay with us for 10 minutes more because it is a Q&A session. I need just 10 more minutes. I don't know who would like to respond. You're very welcome. The first question is as follows. In the Anthropocene age, regarding the planetary limits, there are some measures to be taken. And how realistic is it to think about equality as regards the responsibilities to be undertaken by the countries? Claudio Tomasi, would you like to answer this question?
Okay, I can take this question. more than how feasible, I would reframe the question in terms of how necessary it is. I think that the reports last year and this year, when we read them together, it's very clear how inequalities are very much at the heart of a lot of the problems that we're facing today. And these are connected to our planetary pressure, but beyond the planetary pressure. It means that inequality is not just a matter of injustice, that people who have less opportunity are cut out from a lot of options, but it also means that these people, they kind of opt out many times in terms of participation, and they go for different ways of showing their discontent and their disagreement. So, you know, the fight against inequality, or for equality, depending how you look at it, is a necessary step if you really want to have human development in the world. Otherwise, we're gonna keep repeating the pattern that we are into right now, where we keep looking at this number of the 1% of the people of the world skyrocketing in terms of privileges and in terms of power, in terms of richness, and the large majority of people getting detached from that. And this has consequences. If we really want to have the option to make a governance structure, both locally, nationally, internationally work, we must work day in, day out to fight against inequalities, because it's the biggest, I would say, cancer that is actually impeding our society to prosper. And this has a consequence also on our planet, but on ourselves in the first place. So for the current generation and for the future generations as well.
Thank you very much. One question is about the technologies using coal in order to get zero carbon. What is the target year for Turkey? There's a reference to China. They say that until 2060, China comes to be carbon neutral. And what is the plan ahead of Turkey? This is the question for you. I can give you some figures. In fact, the Republic of Turkey in fact committed officially that until 2030 it increased its carbon emissions by 6-fold compared to 1990. I understand that your words are not very bright and hopeful. One more question then for you. With the lockdown and pandemic, the green gas emissions, in fact, are reducing. There are findings about this. And what about the sustainability of this reduction? Would you say anything about this reduction? We can do nothing with this reduction because this is temporary. And, you know, with the China going back to work, in May and in June, the world restored back to what it was. And in 2020, there is a slight reduction. However, this reduction is not sustainable. We can sit at home, we can wear masks, we can go nowhere, we can buy nothing, we can continue like this. Yes, that can be continuing. But once we go in the street, the world will be restored back to what it was. Maybe I can say something positive, huh? Okay, anyway, I agree with Levent, that is true. That is why Turkey needs to have a new carbon emission reduction commitment. But with the new technologies, you know, I'm speaking as an economist now, you know, I'd like to speak about that distinction between economy and nature, because the professor just underlined that dichotomy. So such a comparison is less possible when you compare to what it was in the past. So the preference of nature over economy, this is not a real comparison that you can make today. So in future, we need to focus on the new technologies. Which new technologies will help us change our economy. Maybe we can start making a plan in order to reduce our carbon emissions. And also it needs to be a timely plan, because we will be leaving COVID-19 process behind. And what about restoring the growth and employment? In fact, Europe has already started studying this, because recovery will not come automatically. We need to make plans. And when we are trying to define the role of the public, we can also set some goals, or at least we can revise our goals about carbon emissions. Sound and healthy INDC needs to be created. I believe this is possible. You also talk about the importance of the youth, and you said that youth must be making the decisions, and there are questions flowing from the young people. They need to ask how they can use this power, how they can change their lives. What are your recommendations for the university students? And you also talked about the consumption. Consumption has become a livelihood for many people, and how can we change it? Maybe Cesar should answer this question, but let me underline one thing, if you let me. In fact, first of all, we cannot fight against nature. Of course, there are some personal initiatives to be taken, but essentially we need public policies, for example, public policies for energy transformation. So from energy transformation into energy efficiency, there needs to be a transformation. And, there is a very big room of maneuver. We can focus on this. We can focus on all the steps that can be taken. Of course, we don't say that let's change nothing, let's continue with our existing consumption habits, eating and drinking habits, but on the public sector, there are more steps to be taken. Says IB. Well, in fact, in order to create new employment areas and in order to change the perception, things can be done because it's important. In fact, the pandemic also brought about some opportunities in the world. Digital migration and digital migrants are the new concepts, and our holiday habits changed. And, there is a new economic livelihood model, for example, innovation camps.
Nature-friendly camps they are, and people started to change the way they are doing business. And when we look at many companies, large companies around the world, people did not have to stay in the same office. For the first time, Silicon Valley got emptied, actually, because a new way of doing business occurred. This was one of the chances brought about by COVID-19. But, for a cultural change and behavioral change among the people, I believe the current mechanisms and education system is not permissive. So I think the education system of 100 years has come to an end of life. I think we lost connection with the gentleman. Yeah, he's back. I think we need to give the youth new capabilities and abilities. And new capabilities cannot be acquired by the youth in the new educational system. That is why the university youth, it's not important for you which university you're graduating from today, but it is important from which professor you are getting your training or education from. This is why it's not only about going to a certain university. It is about improving yourself. It is about improving your skills in digital environment, in civil society. So what youth needs to do is to improve themselves, self-improvement. And NGOs gives lots of opportunities and chances for the youth to improve themselves without lots of economic cost. I believe there are certain chances and opportunities out there for the youth to do something for themselves. And going to a university and high school is not enough for them to improve themselves. Unfortunately, this is not the case at the moment. AI, as I said in my speech, what is economical is the ecological. If something is ecological, then it means they are economical. Let me underline this principle again. This is one piece of the vision of the European Union. With the Green Deal, 1 billion euros has been allocated for BD, biodiversity research. But in Turkey, we have a lot to do. We have a lot of research to do in Turkey too. When we consider the circumstances, geographical circumstances of Turkey, being at the juncture of the continents, we can call Turkey as Asia Minor, but when it comes to biodiversity, we have continental biodiversity. Well, look at TÜBİTAK data. When you make a search using the keyword biodiversity, ecosystem services, and ecosystem in general, you cannot find any call for proposals from TÜBİTAK, unfortunately. But there is this reality of loss of biodiversity. Well, I am speaking as a director of ECOSAM, by the way. I had a meeting with Mr. Hasan Mandal, the president of TÜBİTAK, as well as the vice president of TÜBİTAK. And they said there should be a homework for them to make project proposals, a call for project proposals in the area of BD research. You know, nature-based restoration, BD research. I think these should be the new core of the research in Turkey, because there is a gap of research in this area. Ecosystem Research and Implementation Center, established in ODTÜ, METÜ in other words, is the first of its kind and the only one of its kind, and it is not enough. Turkey is a large country. Turkey is a country with large biodiversity, so there has to be a lot more research centers in this area. I'll be making an addition from the financial perspective. You know, coal is one of the biggest problems in Turkey and around the world. So well, there might be not direct targets by the public about this, but the private banks, they have certain targets when it comes to coal. They try to establish certain limitations for coal. Judging from the data of the last 5 years, what we see is private banks are not financing the establishment of new coal plants or natural gas plants. So these are some of the goals adopted or actions taken by some private banks, and they are focusing on renewable energy efficiency, and they are contributing to the reduction of carbon emissions, I believe. And lastly, youth. I think youth are the drivers. Youth are the drivers of change. Youth are the consumers of the future as well. They're going to show how we can change in the future by preferring certain companies to work with, by preferring certain products to consume. And they are going to help with the transformation of supply chain. They're going to help with the transformation of the whole system, actually. This is why I think youth should be kept in the loop all the time, and they're going to contribute very greatly to the system. Well, I have one single addition to make, if I may. I beg your pardon.
Şimdi insani gelişme raporları aslında birbirini besleyen raporlar.
Human development reports.
Eşitsizliklerle mücadelenin çok önemli olduğunun altını çizmiştik. Şimdi bu daha doğayla uyumlu büyümeyle birleşiyor. Ama bu kısmı unutmayalım. Gençler konusunda birinci söyleyeceğim şey şu anda genç işsizliği Türkiye'de %33 yaklaşık. Dolayısıyla gençler arasında rekabet yaratmak, hani birisinin daha öne geçip iş bulması daha önemli olabilir diğerine göre, ama toplam açısından, toplam istihdam açısından bir şey fark etmiyor. Dolayısıyla istihdama ve genç istihdamına bakış açımızda yine eşitsizliklerle bağlantılı daha radikal düşünmeye başlamamız son derece kritik oluyor. Yoksa çok iyi niyetli demeçler, iyi niyetli konuşmalar yapıyoruz ama neredeyse 3 üniversite öğrencisinden birisi işsizken birisinin öbürüne göre daha avantajlı hale getirilmesi ana sorunu çözmüyor. Bu da dönüşüm sorunuyla o nedenle eşitsizliklere geçen yılki planda, raporda olduğu gibi eşitsizliklere de daha değişik bakmamıza gerekiyor. Şu anda dünyada kişi başına gelir $11.000 aşağı yukarı benim hesaplarımıza göre. Türkiye'nin çok üstünde. Ama bunun dağılımı ülkelere, bölgelere, toplum gruplarına göre dağılımı, yani bölüşümde yaratılan büyük problemler ve demin söylediğim bunun tüketimle eşlenmesi, daha fazla tüketim, daha fazla marka tüketimiyle eşlenmesi ve iyi yaşamın böyle oluşturulması da üzerinde çok durmamız gereken meseleler diye eklemiş olayım. Teşekkürler.
Teşekkürler. Evren Hanım, kısaca size, yalnız çok kısaca bunu sormak istiyorum. Kadın çalışan oranımız %50'nin altında demiş bir izleyici.
% of women employees in Turkey. So what can we do in order to solve this problem? I believe there is this significant work underway, and there is, I think, no legal sanction or something for this 50% rate. No, unfortunately, there are no sanctions or something. But we can only motivate companies to employ more women. I talked about gender equality loans and credits, for example. Companies can set up certain targets, and they can also play with the loan interest rate in order to be motivated, to employ more women. And we're also trying to motivate the companies, showing that they can have increased success by employing more women in their portfolio. But the thing is, there is this club called 30% Club, and it favors the idea of having more than 30% of women represented in the board of directors of the companies. And this movement is expecting the chairs of the board of directors to understand this commitment. So actually, we are trying to encourage the companies to understand such commitments, and we're trying to follow up with the developments in this respect. I have one last question, and after getting the answer to that question, I'll be giving the floor lastly to the panelists for their last sentences. Let me hear the last question. The increase of the rank, the score of Turkey in the index. Why is the increase of the score for Turkey? Well, the thing is, Turkish, the ranking of Turkey might have increased because of per capita income.
Problemli alanı ise kadınların iş gücüne katılımıyla kaynaklı kadın gelir dağılımı, kadınlardaki gelirle ilgili alan. Yani kadın iş gücü ve kadın gelirini arttırılması bundan sonra Türkiye'nin gelişimde daha yukarıya çıkmasındaki ana nokta.
Pekala, Claudio, acaba buradan da...
Yes, sir. You have the floor.
Yes, I think that Vural Bey very well explained it. The recent history of Turkey, the last 30 years, is undeniable. The indicators, the numbers have gone up in terms of life expectancy, in terms of years of education, in terms of income. And when we compare also Turkey to other countries around the world, let's say the progress in these indicators of Turkey is above average. So it's a positive story in that sense. As I was saying in the presentation, however, when we go down to the granular, let's say, analysis, inequalities, they play a strong role in Turkey. So Turkey has a higher level of inequalities compared to the others, or the average high human development index countries. So now that Turkey for the second year has entered this kind of group of country, of course, as some of the panelists were saying, even more so, Turkey has to look at this bunch of country as a reference in terms of quality of education, in terms of quality of health, in terms of quality of their workforce. So there is a lot of work to be done, not only in terms of bringing up this number, but in terms of the quality and in terms of exclusion of certain sectors of society. And of course, gender, women, I said it also in my presentation, is number one, because when we account women in these inequalities, let's say Turkey goes down by several positions to the 68th position. The way I see this report this year is very much a continuity to last year report on inequalities, because the way I see what we're saying right now is that in order to make peace with the planet and actually find a way of making our economies and our society working in sync with the planet, is the equivalent of saying that for the future generation, we don't want to give them a degree of inequality. So I see this as an intergenerational inequality report in a way, which says that if we don't tackle the climate change, the biodiversity loss, and what basically, again, also some of the panelists were saying, the production and consumption cycle, if we don't tackle this, then this is gonna imply that for the next generation, the freedom of choices, which is the basis of the human development, not the concept of freedom and the options that we have, will be limited, because our kids and the kids of our kids will have less options in terms of deciding on what to do with their lives, because the quality of air will be disastrous, because the quality of land will be degraded, because the quality of water will be also acidified, etc., etc. So I see this very much also as a call to act now in order not only to tackle the current inequalities, but the planetary issue as a producer of future inequalities. This is very important for me.
Thank you very much, Mr. Guman. There is a question for you. Since the resources, so I think recovery, recycling, reuse, and circular economy is on the agenda of the countries. What do you think Turkey, what kind of steps Turkey has been taking? What kind of steps Turkey has been taking in this respect for a circular economy? Because we cannot see lots of steps taken by Turkey. What do you think from the perspective of TEPAL? And do you think is COVID-19 continues for 2 years or something, the plastic use of plastic packages by the delivery guys will expand actually? What do you think? Well, this is what I was trying to say actually. These are all priorities for Turkey. Issues to be solved for Turkey as well. And let me put it that way. There is this dilemma which is not significant anymore. Economy or nature? No, this dilemma is insignificant for the world, but Turkey still has work to do, has road today to take, including moving into nanotechnology, transformations in the system. Lots of steps, multiple steps have to be taken in Turkey simultaneously. Green Deal also covers circular economy, as you would very well appreciate. Energy efficiency, I called it that way. But still, this Green Deal covers multiple topics at the same time. And Turkey, what Turkey needs is a similar green transformation package, actually. And this is time for Turkey to decide how to do it. It is time because of two reasons. One reason is we need to think about how to exit the system brought about by COVID-19. We need to think about new growth dynamics. We need to think about how we can create new employment opportunities, and through new technologies, we need to think how we can reduce carbon emissions, how we can do savings in this respect. It's what we need to do. I think we need to adopt a more comprehensive point of view to things. And secondly, Turkish economy is an indispensable part of the European economy of the European Union. Today, we have been talking about global value chains, whether global value chains will get away from China and come closer to the European Union, whether Turkey can benefit from that. Actually, this has everything to do with the Green Deal, actually. The European Union will set up this new commercial platform with the new commercial partners, and also if you have lots of carbon footprint, actually, if you're producing with high carbon footprint, then you will be taxed. You will be exposed to taxation by the European Union at the border. So this is what I'm trying to say. Actually, with the Green Deal, a new growth strategy has been adopted by the European Union member states. And as this is the case, what Turkey needs to do is to lose no further time and try to consider how we can transform ourselves simultaneously with the European Union. We do not have such a program or platform today in Turkey, but absence of such a platform does not mean that we do not attach importance to this topic. We need to get ourselves adapted to the new circumstances. As Mr. Levant mentioned, INDC, the plan 5 years ago about savings, about carbon emissions. But today, well, let's put it this way: the Chinese, they were negative about green transformation. And in their arguments, what they were saying is, we are a developing country, we need to develop. That's why we cannot see any other options to develop. You polluted the world, and you polluted the world in the past, and we can pollute it today, they say. But today, carbon neutrality is possible, as we have learned. That is why China today has carbon neutrality targets by 2060. I think we need to do the same. We need to get adapted to the changing world, to the new world. And we need to be adapted by coming up with a growth strategy. And this is what we are trying to do as Step Up. Actually, we are trying to come up with a plan for such a growth. Thank you very much, Sir Professor. Thank you. I'm not trying to shut you up, but thank you. Well, it seems that Chinese started to understand the gravity of the things, but Turkey also should do something. We were just curious whether Turkey had these measures on the agenda or not. Maybe what will happen in the United States, etc. I'm optimistic about the Biden government, by the way, in the USA, says the gentleman. Well, the thing is, if you want to take the last floor, you can take it, everybody. Well, new employment areas can be created, but only with radical changes. We can do radical changes in agriculture, for example. Turkey was an agricultural country, but unfortunately, we sought after getting rich very easily. That's why we moved into building making, urbanization, etc. And we started to lose the values to be brought about by the agricultural sector. On the other hand, there are still opportunities for a generation of jobs and employment. E-agriculture, e-commerce is one of them. We can create lots of chances of employment for the youth by going into e-trade, e-commerce, etc. But we need to come up with correct and radical policies. These are what are needed in Turkey. There are lots of research which shows that if you do not increase the economic welfare of the people, then people will not be selective for the things that we want them to select, actually. This is why what you need to do is to increase the economic welfare of the people. In northern countries, in Europe, there is this sharing economy. There is also transformation to changing the consumption behaviors. We can do the same in Turkey. Pandemic might have brought about lots of negativity, but also it provided an impetus to the digitalization, which brought about lots of opportunities. If we can increase the digital skills of the people, then we can increase their employability. I think this is one of the areas that we need to focus on, with a particular focus on increased economic welfare of the people and increased chances of employability. I agree with Professor Guven. There are certain artificial agendas today in place, but we got equal with the European Union member states because of the COVID-19. So I think new partnerships can be fostered from now on, especially. Well, I think Biden made an explanation today. Biden's declared that they're going to undersign the climate agreement. Again, I think the storm will cover the European Union as well. Thank you very much, Mr. Sezai. It is high time for us to call it a day, but you have one final remark, we can collect it. But let's put it that way, if I may. Human development is a basic concept, hopefully. You want to say something? Yes. Well, we shouldn't be limiting ourselves to focusing on climate change. Biodiversity is important for controlling the impacts and mitigating the impacts of climate change. Well, talking of education, talking of production, talking of genetic diversity, speaking of diversity of species, ecosystem services, well, all of them boils down and comes down to the richness, wealth of biodiversity as well as the wealth of ecosystems. I agree with the gentleman who said that educational system should be changed. I think every university student should learn about the concepts of ecosystems and biodiversity. We need to give them a new mentality. You know, biodiversity is not equally distributed in the countries of the world. We are rich in biodiversity as Turkey, but we need to take measures to show that we value our biodiversity. Any last remark from the floor?
Maybe on my side, to thank you very much for this engagement. I think we went almost 1 hour over time, and everybody's here still debating, contributing, and this is very heartening for us, because thinking maybe 10 years ago or even 5 years ago, such a discussion in these terms would have not been possible, maybe 1 year ago even. And this is a little bit what this human development report is telling us. It's telling us that times have changed. And in reality is a value chain, is a normative change, and is something that we really have to reflect upon. It's something that is getting enthusiasm out of us. The creativity, innovation, technology is there, resources are there. It's a matter of how to harness it, how to use it. Professor Sack was saying this dichotomy between humans and nature is not there anymore. Of course, economically speaking, socially speaking, environmentally speaking, it makes sense to produce this change. And being able to say this and being able to have a frank discussion about this is already showing that times are changing. Now we have to follow up on this and make it really happen. So thank you very much for being with us and commenting and helping us on this work around the human development that is very relevant for Turkey, but for all human beings and for the nature across the globe. Thanks on my side on behalf of UNDP.
Thank you very much, all the panelists, all the speakers, all the participants. It is the end of the launch event. I am a pessimist normally, but I've learned from the professors that I should be somehow optimist. Everything lies with the science and evidence. Thank you. Tomorrow, there is a launch event for the Europe and CIS. And there will be the launch event of the UNDP Human Development Report in the Europe and CIS region tomorrow. Thank you very much for your time. I'm very happy to know you. All the best. Thank you very much. Thank you.